When leadership fails, the consequences can be devastating. This is Barbados. Greetings, all. Greetings. About about 1605, I think it was, if I remember my history education correctly. British they stumbled across, well, not really stumbled across, Barbados was known, but the Spanish didn't want it because it didn't have any gold. But the British came not because Barbados was beautiful, but they figured, well, this is one of the islands that nobody else wanted and we will inhabit it. And after owning it, they discovered it was a great place because anything coming from Africa going to the west, brought in by the British or French or Spanish, Barbados was the first landmass they sighted coming across the Atlantic. And don't forget, this was the time slavery was in full force. Well, it wasn't full force, but it's getting going. It had become a necessity for the Europeans by that time. If they wanted to build something, they had to have Africans. Most of the other islands were decimated by either the diseases that the Europeans had or from the labor. But anyway, this is Barbados. That's the island. But the history now is a more dark place than this beautiful little island that you see. We go from slavery to to emancipation. And one of the things that the British did was, instead of, when they supposedly abolished slavery, paying the former slaves to work the plantations, they brought in Indians and other peoples from other countries that they ruled into Barbados. They didn't only do that to Barbados, they did that to all the countries in the Caribbean. Guyana, if you look at the history of Guyana, it's even worse than Barbados. Trinidad, even worse than Barbados. We come to the modern era. And this is Barbados of 2025. A small island now where everybody knows almost everybody. I'm driving down the road with a friend of mine, and he sees a license plate from anywhere in the island, and can say, well, oh, that car is owned by so and so and so. And they ask the person the history of that person, he can tell you, oh, he does this, he does that, he does that. Or he's the biggest drug dealer in Barbados. Or that's one of this politician's big boy friends. I said, he's a drug dealer. Hey. Different place to slavery. Different, supposedly different leaders, different rulership. Now black people, African, running the government. You got this drugs. So everybody knows everybody. How are these drugs getting into the country and the politicians are not knowing about it? Black man facing multiple robbery charges. It's not only robbery, but people are complaining about gun violence in general, murder. Classes forms to be replaced with grade system from 2026. So they're going from the British or the system Barbados uses today to the American system. Schools in Barbados are becoming like schools in America. Education is on the decline. Imagine Barbados trains all its nurses. There's a training. There's a system to train nurses here in Barbados. But Barbados don't have the required number of nurses to service the country. Nurses come from Ghana. And I've seen how nurses and doctors are trained in Africa. Some of them get very good training. The majority, the training is horrendous. So much so that Cuban doctors and nurses and administrators have to be brought into Africa. Barbados is following this trajectory. I'm showing you all of these things to point out something. The 10th law lands September 1st, but can Barbados see itself clearly? One of the things that governments do, or leaders do, when they lose or are incapable of leading, providing effective leadership, is that they bring into force laws that restricts people's freedom and liberty. Those of you who live in America, you know about what happened after September 11th. And those laws were written long before September 11th, waiting for the right time to be brought into effect. Barbados is following that trajectory. And they're blaming it on crime. There's a law. Let's find it and bring it up. One of my favorite people. Oh boy. Brother Dale Marshall. Barbados is changing its law on wiretapping. to include measures that are not covered by the Constitution, that are outside the Constitution, and they're trying to use crime as a pretense. As a matter of fact, there's a section of the law that allows it now for that you don't have to even get a judge to say, well, okay, you're allowed to do this. If the prime minister or the president, or they say my dear brother Dale Marshall, decide that they have someone who's constantly agitating them, they can get a warrant to tap his phone, or you can call the chief of police, or Mr. Marshall here, without a warrant, and get his phone tapped. Before, you had to have a warrant, or you could use the information in court. Now they're going to go against the Constitution and say, we don't need that warrant, and we can still use that information in court. When you lose the ability to lead and guide effectively, this is what happens. If you look carefully down in the last sentence, it mentions a Caribbean Court of Justice ruling recognizing the person's right to privacy. It's a constitutional right. Barbados is trying to take, not Barbados itself, but a group of people, president, prime minister, leaders who cannot effectively lead the country. So they decided to take away constitutional guarantees in an effort to put fear into the population. That's all it is. They call it the Interception of Communications Bill. But you don't need a bill expanding on something that's already on the books. And as I said, Barbados is a very small country. The people, if I want to know something about Barbados, in this village where I live, I can ask anyone, and they will tell me the history of it. Well, why is it there's a problem with the water system in St. Lucie, which is another parish of Barbados, and this person in St. Joseph or St. Michael can tell me the whole story? Government neglect, people being paid do a job that they're not doing correctly, politicians who, when you hold them, bring them to the floor to say, hey, you've been at this 10 years, and you're telling us every year that the system is going to be fixed, and you can't fix it. They know it all. But here's government saying, we got this army. Barbados needs an army because it's got a neighbor next door in St. Lucia or St. Vincent or Trinidad that's been attacking Barbados. And we need an army to fight. Barbados has got a police force. It's got a coast guard, but drugs still enter the country in large numbers. I mean, quantities that boggle the mind. Everybody knows everybody. And supposedly the police don't know who's bringing in the drugs. The Coast Guard don't know who's bringing in the drugs. The leaders don't know who's bringing in the drugs. And if there's a fire in St. Lucie, 5 minutes after I finish talking to you, everybody in the island would know about it. This is another face that I would like you to be impressed by. This is the former Central Bank of Barbados governor. In this article, Mr. World is putting forward a case that Barbados needs to get more foreign investment because the amount of foreign investment coming into Barbados has declined to it's currently at 3%, 3.3%, 2024. But I want you to pay attention to some things that is in the art that are in the article. I want you to look carefully at the second paragraph from the top. It said, the former consultant to the International Monetary Fund and World Bank warned that declining FDI, foreign direct investment, signals a scarcity of growth, inducing projects that could hamper the region's ability to fund essential imports. As the economies grow, countries will need to import increasing amounts of fuel and other essentials for the use by consumers. Look at this thing here again. The second paragraph. The economic advisor contrasted Guyana's fortunes with a more sobering outlook for the wider region. Guyana now just discovered oil. Well, not just discovered oil. There's oil throughout the Caribbean, all the way down from Florida. There's this, the way oil works, this is, oil and water are similar in the way they accumulate inside the earth crust, the earth's surface. Carbon is in the air. When the rain falls, everything in the air gets put into the ground, and it slowly builds over time. Seepage from the ground takes with it that carbon into the earth. Just like your water gets filtered by the earth and form into pools underground, which we then pump out for us to drink. So too oil is accumulated in the earth. It is carbon. Carbon, people. When trees rot, carbon. When we burn carbon fuel and the carbon was in the air, the waterfalls, comes back to the ground. We are listening to people talking, they know, some of them know these facts. But they want to make you believe in something else. But we are drifting off. This is about Barbados. Second paragraph from the top. The former consultant to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank warned that declining FDI, foreign direct investment, signals a scarcity of growth-inducing projects and could hamper the region's ability to fund its essential imports. Imports now. It's that word, imports. As the economies grow, countries will need to import increasing amounts of fuel and other essential for the use of consumers and for inputs into production processes. What did we just read about Guyana and the oil? All along our shores, we can drill oil. The Atlantic Ocean has plenty of it underneath the water. But it's a matter of who owns the drilling equipment and who is allowed to take it out of the ground. I'll make an example of you go back and search for Ghana, and you will see that Ghana has significant amounts of oil. The so-called world powers of the West told Ghana, you cannot take it out. But what we allow you to do is we will allow you to create something year of the return, 2019. That's how you will get your money. You will get people from the diaspora come to Ghana and spend their money instead of you coming on the oil market. That's what they did to Guyana up till today. And they allowed Guyana to pump oil when they lost Venezuela and Russia. When they were trying to keep Venezuela and Russia out of the oil market, they got Guyana. So when he's saying what he's talking about, he's, well, they all do. I hope you are seeing this. Top paragraph. Dr. World argued that a widely recognized obstacle to foreign investment is Caribbean government's dismal record for administrative and regulatory competence. Saying that the government leaders are incapable administrators, incompetent. Dismal record for administrative and regulatory competence means that they're incompetent administrators. And I'm showing you the laws that they're making because of that incompetence. When you know about the crime, you know who's doing it, and it may be a friend of yours, associate. But you got to pretend that you're making the laws. And those laws are against your constitution, taking away the rights of your people. Just to make it appear that you are competent. That you are doing something. But factually, what you're doing is causing a bigger problem for the coming generation. Barbados Defense Force, BDF, calls back veterans. Why, if we have a police force, are they recalling former defense force people? Who are these people guarding against? Here you have a local this is called crop over. And you have the Barbados Defense Force out in force now. Local celebration. And they have the army on the streets. The Barbados Defense Force is making a fresh appeal to former service members to temporarily rejoin the force as it seeks to strengthen its operation in the interest of national security. Imagine, what national security does Barbados have? There are no terrorists in Barbados. There are no terrorists in Barbados. No terrorist attacks. No buildings being burned, bombed, destroyed. Just people making their voices heard, which is normal. You should be able to talk to your politician. You should be able to discuss what's on your mind on the radio. But it's not acceptable to some people. In 1937, even before that, slavery was abolished. Well, let's go with the abolished thing. Slavery was abolished because it was getting too expensive. The British were killing too many people. Too many black people were dying, and a few Caucasians too. The fight against slavery is becoming too expensive to maintain. Then after slavery, they call them riots. The British call them riots in 1937. The people of Barbados rose up because of the wickedness of the British, Caucasian in Barbados. And today, the same mentality, but in a blackface. See the former Bank of Barbados governor, employee of the IMF and World Bank. It's not working for Barbados. Barbadian, but not working for Barbados. But he's telling you what his cohorts are doing. Incompetent administrators, just like he was. Anyway, video getting too long. Have a great day wherever you are.